Salutations, people! Welcome to Page 3 Killers, Murders That Went Unnoticed, a podcast where we dive into the murder cases that went unnoticed by our nation's newspapers.
Hi, Shay.
Hi, John.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, guys. Welcome back.
Welcome to Page 3 Killers, Murders That Went Unnoticed, Season 2, Episode 41.
Yes, and this week we got a good one. We're going to be talking about the Skid Row stabber in Los Angeles, California. Not to be confused with the Skid Row slasher, who was active at the same time. So, yeah. It was an interesting case, 2 cases to research. We're just going to talk about the Skid Row stabber today. And we're going to leave the Skid Row slasher for another day. So, what do you think?
It's, Skid Row's not a good place to be.
Yeah, I know.
I can't feel bad for him, though, because Skid Row's rich people who were needlessly risky and then lost a bunch of money.
Really?
That's what Skid Row was, yeah.
Well,
it was basically a bunch of investment bankers who were needlessly aggressive with their investments and lost a bunch of money and became homeless.
Wow.
So it's their own fault.
Well, I mean, Skid Row today is not that. It's, mostly people that are, like, drugs, lots of prostitution. It's actually where, so the city of Los Angeles didn't want their homeless population anywhere else, so they sort of forced them into, like, a one area.
Sounds very Californian.
Yeah. So they didn't want the homeless population disturbing the rest of, like, the, people. So, like, they pushed them down into this area, and it became known as Skid Row. And basically, that's where they drop off all the convicts after they get out of jail. Which I think is crazy.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's a rough area to be in. And made worse by a homicidal maniac running around, stabbing people. And at the same time, previously, I mentioned they had the Skid Row slasher, who, I guess you can sort of tell what he did,
He slashed people.
Slashed people, yeah. So, they were active around the same time. The Skid Row slasher came first, and then the Skid Row stabber. So this case does have some controversy with it. So there was somebody that was arrested for it, but there was a lot of people that believed he didn't do it. I'm just going to say we're going to reserve judgment until the end. All right.
So was this guy on Skid Row, or did he just venture down to Skid Row?
He went down to Skid Row. Like,
Gotcha.
He lived, near it, but he wasn't, homeless. All right. So he had, he had an apartment that he lived in. And he just associated with a lot of people that were on Skid Row. So before we go too far, I want to give a huge shout out to our patrons. That would be Christy Bryson, Chelsea Hargrett, and Stacey Fragale. Thank you guys for donating on Patreon. We appreciate your support. If you guys out there want to support the podcast, you can hit us up on Patreon and support the podcast for as little as $1 a month. If you can't do that, remember to like, share, subscribe. That always helps. All right, so we want to roll into the news.
What year are we talking about?
1978. We haven't done that year yet. At least I don't think we have. I tried to check, and I didn't see anything with 78 on there in my list. So this one's going to be quite interesting. So we're going to start off the news in 1978 with April 27th, which would be the Willow Island disaster. Do you know anything about that, babe?
No.
I don't know. Okay, so it was the deadliest construction accident in United States history. Now, 51 construction workers were killed when a cooling tower for a nuclear power plant under construction collapsed at the Pleasant Power Station in Willow Island, West Virginia. Yeah.
I'm surprised that's the deadliest construction accident. I figured more than 51 people died sometime in the, like 1800s or something. Early 1900s.
I mean, there was like factory fires and all, but not sure like during construction, like maybe some guy like fell off of like a skyscraper or something. Like those guys that do you see the pictures of them like eating the lunch on
The
like
iron workers?
I would never.
That was a staged photo. That wasn't...
Really?
Yeah, that wasn't real.
Oh my god. Lying to the world.
Yeah.
So our next one would be May 5th. We have Pete Rose of the Cincinnati Reds gets his 3,000th major league hit. Now, who was the guy that was on the Phillies?
Pete Rose.
Oh, so he was. I kind of thought that. I was like, Pete Rose, isn't he the guy that got
Well, he wasn't on the Phillies and for a few more years after that.
Yeah. I was like, I know that there was like some controversy about adding him to like the
Hall of Fame.
Yeah, the Hall of Fame. I think what was it? It was steroids?
No,
he was betting on his team or something.
He was gambling on games that he was the manager of.
Yeah. Well, I mean, was he playing?
No, but he was managing. He was like the coach.
Oh, okay. Like when you say managing, I'm thinking he's like back office managing. Like
no, in baseball they
coach.
Call the coach the manager. Like the head coach would be the manager.
All right. Interesting. Thanks.
Yep.
Which is why you're here. So our next one, this one here, I really want to look at. I want to hear a documentary about this. So on August 2nd, we have President Jimmy Carter declares an unprecedented state of emergency and evacuation immediately following the revelation that the Niagara Falls, New York neighborhood, Love Canal, is built on a toxic waste dump. Like, really? I've never even heard of this.
Yeah, I've never heard of it either.
Yeah. I so want to see a documentary on this. I really hope there's one out there. Do you want to read the next one since I put that one in there for you? It's a little sports fan.
During a preseason game against the Oakland Raiders, New England Patriots wide receiver Darryl Stingley sustains a spinal cord injury on a hit from Jack Tatum, leaving him a quadriplegic, and he would die from complications of his injury on April 5th, 2007.
Yeah. And that happened in a preseason game on August 12th. Yeah. Do you know like anything about those players?
Nothing. I knew about the incident, but
yeah. Okay. So
I mean, Jack Tatum's a pretty well-known player.
Yeah. Okay. So on September 25th, PSA Flight 182, a Boeing 727, collides with a small private airplane and crashes in San Diego, California, killing 144 passengers and crew. I'm assuming it was crew. All I know is that there was a total of 144 people killed. Yep.
I always find it strange. Like, you wouldn't think planes would collide. There's a lot of room up there.
I know.
Not exactly a congested highway.
Yeah, the problem is I think that
I guess like landing and taking off.
Yeah, that's where the dangers usually are, unless there's like a faulty thing on your plane.
But still, like, how many planes are there in the sky at one time?
Oh,
like
hundreds.
Yeah, over the entire country.
Mm-hmm. Thousands.
Over the entire country. They're nowhere. They're tens of 15. They're tens of hundreds of miles apart.
But you gotta.
What are the odds of them hitting each other?
They use specific routes.
I guess.
And it's sort of like train travel where they have to like make like maintain a certain speed and to be in a certain area so that there are no collisions, and that's why like air traffic controllers and all that.
But like what I'm saying is they could be like a close call is hundreds, if not thousands of feet apart.
Yeah. Like how are they that close together when there's like
so like
that
if
much
they
space on
actually collide, it just seems weird. Especially since it was a small private airplane. I'm sure they don't stay on the same routes.
So my guess is that one was taking off and the other one was landing or something like that. One was like in a landing trajectory and
yeah, it doesn't actually say that they like when it happened.
Yeah. So that's my assumption. But yeah, just another reason for me never to get on a plane.
I guess. It's not that bad.
Yeah. It would just be like that song Ironic by Alanis Morissette. I'd get on the plane and it would crash. Like on my first plane ride. I'd be like, nope. That's what I get. So the next one we have is December 15th. We have Cleveland, Ohio becomes the first major American city to go into default since the Great Depression under Mayor Dennis
Kucinich.
Oh, thank you. You knew about this, right?
Well, Dennis Kucinich he's still a pretty major politician.
Are you kidding me? Yeah. Like how do these like guys stay in politics?
I don't know, but he ran for president a little while back. Like he was a primary candidate. Yeah.
Afraid for our country.
People fall up. That's what they do.
Yeah. I guess if you know how to talk the buzzwords to like regular people and like I don't know.
Or no, you just have to blame it on the other side. He was the mayor, but it wasn't his fault. Just because he was in charge and had control of everything doesn't mean it was the other people who sabotaged him.
Who came before him that sabotaged him. Yes.
And a certain amount of population is going to believe that no matter what.
Yeah. So. Now we're going to talk. I believe we have December 15th. I threw this one in here. Superman, the movie, is released in theaters in the United States. I think it's the one with Chris Reeves.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Now, our seedy side is where it's at. All right. This
is the heyday.
This is the heyday of everything. All right. So we've got bank robberies. We got serial murders. We got it all in like this year. All right. This is a crazy ass year. We have assassinations, major bank robberies. It's crazy. So let's get started with our seedy side. So on June 29th, we have actor Bob Crane is found bludgeoned to death in his Scottsdale, Arizona apartment. This murder has never been solved. And I think it would be really interesting to look at. But it was like a major thing. It was like in every newspaper across the country.
He knew something he shouldn't have known.
Probably. Now, on June 12th, we have serial killer David Berkowitz, who is the son of Sam, is sentenced to 365 years in prison. I believe they gave him like 3 life sentences for a total of like 365 years. Like, it was crazy. He then found Jesus in prison a few years later and like tried to get like, say he was like rehabilitated, that he was like insane and all this other stuff. No, I think he just played the system very well.
Well, didn't he say he was schizophrenic? Or at least he claimed to be.
He claimed to be. He was never diagnosed, I don't think. So our next one, you wanna take this one?
Jim Jones.
Yeah.
That's all you say. Kool-Aid, drink the Kool-Aid.
Yeah. So November 18th, we have the mass murder and suicide of 909 Americans. 909 Americans in Jonestown under the direction of Jim Jones. Did he drink the Kool-Aid, or he tried to get on a plane and leave, right?
I believe so, yeah. He didn't drink the Kool-Aid.
Yeah. Oh, just everybody else. Like, I do believe that there was some children that were able to escape, like teenagers and all.
Yeah, there was a handful of people who didn't.
Yeah, that they ended up escaping and surviving.
I believe their parents told them not to drink it. A few of them.
Yeah. Now, the next thing we have is November 27th. In San Francisco, California, we have Mayor George Moscone, and the city supervisor, Harvey Milk, are assassinated by former supervisor Dan White. And if anyone's ever seen the movie Milk, that's what it's about. Yeah. Now, the next one is pretty interesting. All right, so this is like a major bank robbery that we have. Like, it's a major heist, I should say. I shouldn't say bank robbery because it happens at the John F. Kennedy International Airport. So on December 11th, we have the Lufthansa. Oh my gosh. Lufthansa heist. So 6 men rob a cargo facility in New York City's Kennedy Airport. And the estimated amount of what they stole was like $5.8 million in cash.
Cash dollar bills? Really?
Yeah. So $5 million of that was in cash. And then the other, like, $875,000 was in jewelry, making it the largest cash robbery committed on American soil at the time. Now, there was ties to, organized crime, obviously. I don't think I want to read through all of that because my notes are pretty long. But yeah, it remained, I believe, the largest robbery until 2014. Or no, there was a and the money and jewels were never recovered, basically. And then on December 22nd, we have Chicago serial killer John Wayne Gacy is subsequently convicted of the murder of 33 young men, and he's arrested. Yeah.
It's a pretty involved year.
Yeah, I know. It's a crazy year. But this is the heyday for serial killers. Like, back when, I don't know if cops have gotten better. Like, police detectives have gotten better at preventing, like, serial killers. Or if something just changed, like, within, like, the
culture changed.
Yeah. That's what I feel. The culture change and the fact that we don't have lead and everything anymore.
Well, yeah.
I actually heard some other people debating this, and they were like, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the fact that we don't have leaded gas anymore, like just pumping fumes into the air out of like cars and all. And they're like, yeah, they got a lot of people got lead poisoning, apparently. I was unsure of how that was possible, but I guess like when it heats up enough, it vaporizes, and then it's like in the air, and then you breathe it in, and then you get lead poisoning.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I don't know. But yeah. So, non-leaded gas prevented serial killers, I guess.
Well, there's the Freakonomics answer.
What's Freakonomics say?
So this I'm going to say something a little controversial here, but eugenics. This is when Roe v. Wade was Roe v. Wade was first introduced, and they call it unwantedness, that there were less unwanted babies, and then therefore the average healthy psychological child increased.
Yeah, because I mean, people do treat kids they don't want like shit, right?
Yeah, generally. And it was actually that and lead.
Yeah,
you were right about the lead.
Yeah,
They determined that lead was probably the second leading
because
cause.
I believe so they were saying that the first boom of serial killers was caused after listen, there's been serial killers throughout time. So simply saying that those two things were just heightened up the
not just serial killers, but crime in general.
Yeah.
This is a high crime time in the United States.
Yeah, it was late 70s or into the 80s.
I believe 1993
was the peak.
So you had late 70s through the 80s, and it peaked in the early 90s. But the types of crimes had changed from the 80s to the 90s.
Yeah, and becoming more violent
and there was also the drug war.
Yes,
kind of skewed the numbers, but this was the heyday of non-gang related violence.
Yeah, and I forgot what I was saying, but I'm sure it was a great point. And I'll probably remember it by the time we get to the end. And then I'll be like, yeah, by the way, guys. So let's move into our topic. So we're going to talk about the Skid Row stabber. Now, he may be an unknown serial killer. It may be that the guy that did it. I mean, I'm not the person that sat on that jury, and I'm not a cop. So I'm going to say, it's either or. Now, this is an American serial killer, obviously, because it happened in America, in Los Angeles. Now, this killer is responsible for the murder of 11 people in the Los Angeles neighborhood known as Skid Row. I found it funny that they referred to it as a neighborhood. It's not a neighborhood. It's literally one street.
It's a homeless encampment.
It's a bunch of homeless people.
It's Kensington under the L.
Yeah, and it's pretty so if you've ever seen anything about the Cecil Hotel, that is right where Skid Row is.
Oh, okay.
The Cecil Hotel. In fact, they were oh yeah, it's smack dab in the middle of Skid Row. And all the crazy things that happen there, they're oh yeah, it's a beacon for evil. And I'm it's kind of funny to hear somebody say it like that. I'm acting like it's paranormal somehow. And I'm no, it's just a really nice building in a real shitty part of town.
Surrounded by a bunch of shitty people.
Yeah. So I think it's funny that they refer to it as a neighborhood. Now, Skid Row is notorious for housing a huge number of homeless people who are regularly subjected to victimization. So, not just police brutality, but they also have, homeless on homeless crime. You get jealous of what somebody else has, so you take it, kind of thing. And obviously, his signature weapon was a knife, all right? I believe they were, kitchen knives. Those kind of knives. Something easy to get a hold of. All right. So, the murders started on the morning of October 23rd, 1978. Now, as victims, the killer chose the homeless population, obviously, because they are transient. As it was put, they are a transient victim pool. And, we've talked about one or two other cases where homeless people were the targets of murder. And it all boiled down to that they were an easy opportunity victim, because their deaths would have little to no police investigation involved in it. They would be like, oh, a homeless
Just
person
another
died?
homeless person got stabbed, probably by another homeless person.
Yeah.
It's not going to be able to identify anyone.
Exactly. Like, half of the witnesses are like either have mental health issues, like schizophrenia, or bipolar disorder or something,
Drug addiction.
and or they have drug addiction, or alcoholics, and they're probably not sober. So they're not good witnesses. They may have seen something, but under enough intoxication of anything, what you saw might not be what you saw, right? It's like, I saw a demon with red eyes. It's like, no, it was a guy with night vision goggles. Something like that. Like,
it's a weird example.
I know. I was like, Criminal Minds came to mind, and it was an episode in Criminal Minds. But, yeah. Although, no, I think Mothman, like, somebody was like, oh, yeah, the guy had, like, glowing red eyes, and I'm like, uh-huh. and they were huge. They were, like, this big, and I'm like, that's, like, night vision goggle things. Like, I'm like, that's not, there's no way it was, like, an actual
That's just
being.
infrared going out.
Yeah. So all right. Yeah. So the victim pool that he chose was homeless men. So the bodies were all dumped in alleyways off of Skid Row, on various streets, and parking lots and other locations that were pretty close to one another. Like, they weren't very, very far from each other. So our first victim would be Jesse Martinez. Now, the first victim, he was 50 years old, and he was stabbed to death in a Skid Row parking lot on the morning of August 23rd, 1978. Now, our second victim would be Jose Cortez. On October 29th, he was killed by the Skid Row stabber and became the second victim. And he was 32 years old at the time, and he was stabbed to death in an alley off of Skid Row. Now, the third victim would be 46-year-old Bruce Emmett Drake. Now, he was found the following day on October 30th, and he was he became the third victim. Obviously, he was stabbed to death off of Skid Row.
So he's going quick. Is a lot.
Yeah, so,
and it's week.
Really, and then you'll see it slow down a little bit, and then it picks back up, and then slows back down. So his next victim, number 4, is found on November 4th, and that would be 65-year-old J.P. Henderson. Now, he was found sprawled on a sidewalk in Skid Row. The fifth victim was killed on November 9th, and that would be 39-year-old David Martin Jones. Now, he was attacked and brutally killed near the Los Angeles City Hall in downtown, which is kind of crazy.
That's his problem. Now the rich people have to see it. You can't have that.
Yeah, and this is where
If he just stays to Skid Row, it's fine.
There's particularly one case later down the list where it really becomes like newsworthy. All right. So up until now, sure, there's probably been some reports of it. The scuttlebutt's probably going around Skid Row to one another, like talking about like these murders. But other than that, I don't think that there was much reported, because look at the level of information I've got. That's it.
Just, hey, some dude was stabbed.
Some dude was stabbed in this area at this time and found on this date, and he was this age, and that's it. And I think it's crazy.
It's probably because it wasn't even out of the ordinary.
Yeah, exactly. Just because of the amount of violence that was going on at the time. All right. So on November 11th, it's our anniversary, guys. So on November 11th, only 2 days after the death of David Martin Jones, our killer strikes again. This time he targets 57-year-old Francisco Perez Rodriguez, and he becomes the 6th victim. Now, he is found in a parking lot, in like a vacant parking lot. Now, on the 12th of December, the stabber commits a double murder. So we have he kills victims 36-year-old Frank Floyd Reed and 49-year-old Augustin E. Luna. Now, Frank Floyd was found in a parking lot, and Augustin was stabbed to death behind a building on South Main Street. On the 17th, so now we have like a couple of days break, and then on the 17th he picks back up with the attack and murder of 34-year-old Milford Fletcher, who is a Native American, was also killed. Now, he was stabbed repeatedly in the upper torso with a long bladed knife, and his body was dumped in a parking lot. To this point, the stabber's victims have been found within a 15-block radius with no survivors. All right, so his first 9 victims, nobody survived. All right, so on...
Does that mean somebody did survive?
So the 10th victim occurs on November 23rd, and that would be 45-year-old Frank Garcia, who was found near City Hall. Now, on Thanksgiving Day, Frank Garcia was stabbed to death on a bench in the City Hall Plaza, less than 200 feet from the entrance of LA Police Headquarters. Now, even though this murder occurred in a prestigious area of the city with a large crowd present for the murder, the killer managed to escape unnoticed. Now, no witnesses were located, and all they were able to get was basically a latent palm print, which they pulled off of the bench near the victim. So according to the investigators, the handprint could have been left by the killer, or it could have been left by the person that last sat there. But, who knows? So our 11th and final victim would be 26-year-old Luis Alvarez. Now, he was stabbed to death on January 21st, 1979. So he closes it out as the final victim. All right. Now, for the investigation, During the subsequent investigations, witnesses were found to a couple of the murders, mainly the David Jones murder. Now, 3 friends of David claimed that an unknown person, they had seen him talking to an unknown person, and that person talked with him for several minutes and then just murdered him, like just stabbed him to death. So, according to the witnesses, the criminal was a 30-year-old black man who spoke with a Puerto Rican accent. It's kind of... I mean, it's like it's kind of specific enough, but not at all. You know, it's kind of general. But then, like, there's like, oh yeah, he spoke with a Puerto Rican accent, like 100%. It was a Puerto Rican accent. Now, they said that he had introduced himself as Luther, was his name. Now, a couple months after that, about in January of 1979, so it was like 3 months, there was an inscription found on a wall at the Los Angeles bus terminal building, like in the bathroom. Said, "My name is Luther. I kill winos and put them out of their misery." And that's all in parentheses. Okay, guys.
Oh, I love the term wino.
What?
The term wino?
I don't get it.
Oh, because wine is the cheapest way to get hammered. Because you could buy, like, it's called bum wine.
Oh. Okay.
So, like, if you wanted, like, because bourbon and stuff like that.
Mad Dog.
Yeah.
Okay.
MD 2020, some Wild Irish Rose. It's my favorite.
It's so gross.
It's delicious.
Your breath stinks so bad after you have that. It's so nasty. I had to tell him he wasn't allowed to get it. He got it like once or twice, and I was like, nope.
Yeah, because
get the fuck out of here.
Wine basically doesn't require much else other than just fermentation.
Yeah.
So it's cheap.
So during the investigation, several people were suspected by authorities, but there was only one really good suspect, all right? And that would be Bobby Joe Maxwell. So in early 1979, a forensic examination of the fingerprints from the palm print found next to next to Garcia's body. Now that's the one that they pulled off of the bench. Was revealed to belong to 29-year-old Bobby Joe Maxwell. Now Maxwell had been released from prison in his native Tennessee and moved to Los Angeles in 1977. Now he was a casual worker, and he spent a lot of his free time in the Skid Row area, along with the homeless residents that he was friends with. Now, in December of 1978, he had demonstrated some deviant behavior against sleeping homeless people, and was arrested on charges of disturbing the public order.
2-1 says he was peeing on him.
No, okay? So, Bobby Maxwell was arrested while standing over a Skid Row homeless man. In his hand was a 10-inch dagger that he was clutching. And, yeah, so cops arrested him. So, he pled guilty on misdemeanor weapons charges and was sentenced to 60 days in jail. So, police continued in their investigation of the most promising suspect to date, which I feel like he might have been the only one, because this is the only one that I found a mention of, was this dude. That's it. So Coincidentally, he was released only 3 days before the stabber committed his last murder. Now, also, while Maxwell was in prison, the Skid Row stabber didn't commit any murders, and based on these facts, he was arrested for suspicion of murder in April of 1979. Now, after his arrest, his apartment was ransacked by the police, during which his shoes, clothes, diaries, and letters were seized. Now, after studying and analyzing the acquired content, the investigator stated that Maxwell's that he was a Satanist, and they were like, "That's all the evidence we need." So they basically, started trial proceedings. So the trial was delayed for about 5 years, which is insane. It was like pushed back to like 1984. And that's when the trial starts. Now, the prosecution's key witness was 37-year-old Sidney Storch. Yeah, Storch. A felon with an extensive criminal record. Now, he in 1983 was Maxwell's cellmate for 3 weeks. Now, at the trial, Sidney Storch claimed that Maxwell had repeatedly admitted to killing the homeless men and described the murders in detail. So Maxwell was charged with 10 counts of murder and 5 counts of robbery in May of 1979. He said that Maxwell also confided to another prisoner that he had killed in order to obtain souls for Satan. Yeah. Now, legal wrangling delayed Maxwell's trial until January of 84. Now, the testimony took another several months, leaving jurors divided in their opinions on his guilt. Now, in addition to the testimonies by the witness, Mr. Scotch, the investigation established that the knife found at Maxwell's apartment had the same width and length as the one used by the killer. Obviously, there was no genetic blood on that knife, so I don't know. I always felt like you can't always get it all off, kind of thing. So a geographical examination was also conducted, which concluded that Maxwell had left the note on the bus terminal building, that wall, confessing to the murders. Now, based on these, testimonies and information, he was found guilty of 2 murders at the end of 1984. So he was convicted of murdering Frank Garcia and David Jones, and he was also acquitted of 3 other murder counts, when jurors failed to reach a decision on all 5 homicides. So Mr. Maxwell was sentenced to life in prison without the chance of parole. Now, even though there was no material evidence found in the other murders, all of the 11 murders were pinned on him and closed, stating that, he did it. Now, this resulted in him being identified as the Skid Row stabber for many years.
But,
yeah. Now, the debate over Bobby Joe Maxwell's guilt went on for several decades following that. Now, with he himself pleading not guilty and regularly lodging an appeal over the next 30 years. Now, in 2010, his lawyers are able to prove that the witness to Jones's murder couldn't identify Maxwell as the killer and had given false testimony in court. Now, he said that basically the witness said that he was under pressure from the investigators and basically gave false testimony. Now, it was also proven that Sidney Storch was a former police officer and informant for many years, had begun abusing his position as an informant in the 1980s, and gave false testimonies in a number of trials due to basically self-interest. Now, as a result, at least 6 cases that used his testimony were considered invalid or unreliable. Now, considering these facts, the appellate court overturned Bobby Joe Maxwell's sentence in 2010 and appointed him a new trial. Now, in 2017, Bobby Joe Maxwell suffers from a severe heart attack, which caused him to fall into a coma. Now, in a new trial following that, basically the Los Angeles County Prosecutor's Office dropped all charges against Bobby Joe Maxwell. Now, in August of 2018, he was found not guilty, and his conviction and prison sentence were ruled as a miscarriage of justice. Unfortunately, he ended up dying in April of 2019, never regaining consciousness, and basically was never able to learn that he had been released from prison. And the files now remain open, and the true Skid Row stabber remains unknown.
At least from what was presented before me, I feel like he probably still did it.
Yeah. You think that it was like shoddy police work and...
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
I mean, there were some things that lined up, like the fact that he was out of jail the entire time that the stabber was active. He was in jail when there was no activity. And then...
And why was he in jail?
For
standing over a homeless person with a knife.
Yeah, so, I mean, there's a lot of things that lead you to believe. I think that really this is because the police wanted a sure seal on the case, and they took shortcuts.
I mean, ultimately, the guy spent the rest of his life in prison. So.
Yeah, and then he died. So... yeah, it was a pretty interesting case. Now, I started reading a book on the on my phone. Basically, I have like the Kindle app, and I started reading this book. I'll have to get the title for you guys. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but it talks about like all of these. Sorry, motorcycle. There we go. Yeah, it talks about like all these cases and murderers and serial killers that like stayed in that area of Skid Row and the Cecil Hotel. And it's so interesting that I'm really going to have to like, give you guys this title in like when I post this. And it talked about this whole case and the other case.
The slasher.
Yeah. Now there was also another guy who was like a German serial killer. And he stayed at the Cecil and like murdered like 2 prostitutes. Like I don't know. I'm like it's a lot for like one area. But it's like it's crazy. So, I think we'll have to do more stuff that's from California. California seems to have all the good serial killers. So you want to close it out?
Bye.
Bye, guys.